My name's Dante. I'm 27 years old and I'm from the United States.
Oh, okay, so from what state?
Colorado.
Hi, my name is Kanchana. I'm from Sri Lanka and I'm 26 years old.
Hello everybody, my name is Amos Ndukwe and I'm from the United States of America and I trade crypto and stocks and I run a online casino.
Yeah, so my name is Alexander Lee. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee and I'm 24 years old.
Hello, my name is Jorge. I am 25 years old. I am from Ecuador.
How did you get to Russia in general for the first time? Why you decided to stay here?
Originally I was traveling around Europe and a friend of mine said that any foreigner can come to Russia as long as they buy a ticket to a Euro Cup 2020 football match, and I thought, why not? So my brother and I, we immediately bought a ticket and flew to the earliest game, and that's how I got into Russia.
You took this opportunity to visit Russia, and you liked it.
I loved it. It was better than expected. It did feel like America a little bit, just how everything is a lot bigger compared to Europe. So I definitely did love it. The food and the people are very nice. So I didn't want to leave.
Really it was because I wanted to study the language from a linguistics point of view, I guess.
I got a scholarship to study in Russia. I passed my final exams and there was an interview and everything, and with my results I managed to win a scholarship to study in Russia. Actually in Sri Lanka it's studying in Russia is kind of popular, from the past, even during Soviet Russia. I even have an aunt who studied in St. Petersburg in Russia, and she studied in Russian during that time. And so I was kind of nervous to study in Russian because Russian is not my language, so first language. So I was kind of confused about that, how would I approach this? But she gave me confidence. It's okay. You'll study you'll learn the language and it'll be fine. So it's kind of popular to study in Russia. There are some opportunities to study here, and I managed to win the scholarship. So I thought, okay, let's try in Moscow. Yeah.
In 2017, after high school, I decided to take a gap year and come learn Russian in Moscow. And I liked it so much, and I decided to stay. So that's sort of how I got here.
So can you name some positive aspects of living here in Moscow?
I'd say a positive aspect is that Russians tend to be, in general, polite. They don't enter your personal bubble really that much. In the United States, people are a lot more kind of outgoing and try to talk with you, which you enjoy in the States, but here it's kind of nice to have people leave you alone.
Actually, I just love Moscow because Moscow is a mix of both modern stuff. We see these modern areas. There's lots of parks, there are lots of places to walk around, and I love history. I really love history. It's my passion. So I like going to museums and everywhere. I just enjoy all these aspects. Moscow is a combination of both modern and historical aspects. So I just love this city.
First of all, freedom, diversity. In Moscow, there is a lot of opportunities, not just in study.
I spend most of my time in St. Petersburg. I've just come to visit Moscow now, recently. However, there are a lot of amazing things I like about this country. I would say the size is the biggest country in the world. Has everything. Has the beaches, has mountains, has cities, has everything you can possibly imagine. The people are very, very nice, very respectful. Always have a great time. The food here is insane. So many different types of cuisines, so many different types of cultures, all put into one. I love it. Language also. I have a tutor. I'm studying. I really want to learn the language. It's a beautiful language to me.
And now, can you, if there are some aspects that you don't like here in Moscow?
Actually, not that much. I'm thinking people at first, when you get to know Russian people, they're kind of cold and they don't talk that much. It's not they're not smiling and that. But even I study in a group where I'm the only foreigner and all my friends in my group are Russians. But when I get to know them and I get to close with them, we become really good friends and everything, which is something is something nice. So my first thing was why are people so cold and everything, but later I realized no, it's just how they are. But later when you get to know them, they're really friendly and really nice.
Say that are very difficult. I would say paying for things. I can't use my American card. I can't use Apple Pay. Things as simple as that are have become very, very difficult. And people don't know English that much here. That's one thing. I do travel a lot. I've been to many, many countries, and even in the most strangest countries, you would have never imagined they just know English. And I don't see that here, and it makes it difficult, but it does force me to learn Russian. So it's good and bad. But yeah, it's pros and cons to everything.
And why do you think Russian people don't really speak English that good?
I will say this. I think it is because the passport that they have is not the strongest, so they don't, they mostly go to Turkey, or they don't leave Russia, and tourists don't come in a lot, English-speaking tourists. So there really is no benefit or no real reason to learn English. But I think it would help Russia a lot if everybody knew English. I mean, if their passport was a little bit stronger, then they'd be able to travel more, and then English would be, more widely used in Russia.
So nowadays many foreign people, they opt for other countries rather than Russia to move to. So why do you think, as an American, why people decide not to move to Russia, not to live in Russia?
Well, I think there's a pretty high barrier to entry as a foreigner living in Russia. I think that first you have to speak the language, and it's also hard to get a visa. I mean, you can't just show up to the Russian consulate and knock on the door. I mean, I've done that actually, and be like, hey, I need a visa, and it's actually really hard to get a visa to come to Russia. So I think the barrier is quite high. But if you travel here and you like it, I think there's ways, you can figure out a way to stay in Russia. So
I think it comes from a long history of Russia being like the villain, especially like in our films. It's always, Russians are always the bad guy, and there's this kind of feeling that Russia is just where the enemy is. So I think there's a lot of misinformation about how Russian people are, but also people don't realize that the country itself is also very beautiful, that the architecture is beautiful, that people here are friendly. So I think it can be a lack of information, as well as you have countries like Korea and Japan, which are very technologically developed. At least that's the idea people are given, so maybe they want to go to a very technologically advanced country. So I think it just kind of depends on where they get their information. I think there's just been many years of this Russia's the villain kind of propaganda, you could say, in the West.
I definitely believe it's just fear-based and propaganda-based, and one thing that I do notice is that even Americans, despite what they say about Russia or whatever, if they meet a Russian in person, they're going to be very kind, very nice, very respectful, very caring, and treat them like anybody else. It's very easy to sit back at home on your couch and have these crazy opinions, but when you're really faced with somebody from the country, they're most likely going to be very understanding. And that's another thing. There's a disconnection, and between the people. If they don't meet, then it's just going to be words thrown, and nobody's ever going to see what it's like. But from what I've heard and what I know as an American who's here, people have nothing against me. I have nothing against Russians, and most Americans have nothing against Russians as well. And if they did have a chance to meet, they'd realize that Americans and Russians are very, very, very similar. I've lived in 5 countries in the world, and there's no other place where there's the most similarities between two people. And I don't think that most Russians and Americans will ever come to realize that because of what we hear on the news and stuff, but we're very, very, very similar people.
I think it's like the general image of Russia to the world. Like, people see Russia and think it's just like Soviet Union, like it's old, people are like this. It's not as developed as Western countries. So this bad image about Russia is here. So I think that's the main reason. But it's not like that. Like Russia, like I see Moscow and I see such an amazing city, such a great, it's a big city, it's really clean, it's really nice, there are lots of places to see. Like, people don't know that. People think like there's this bad image about Russia. But like I have friends, like as I told you, I have a good friend from France, and like he really loves Moscow. Like, he says it's like one of the best cities in the world, and like people should come and see like how the difference is without just looking at the internet and thinking about these opinions.
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons. I believe that the woke culture is spreading, and it's really a virus. And I believe that coming to Russia, you're able to stay away from that toxicity, that nonsense. They say that America is the home of the free and the brave, but we're not able to think freely and have our own opinions, in a sense that if you don't agree with what's going on with the woke community, then you could lose your job, lose your bank account, and get canceled, and all these other things. And people feel like Russia is a safe space for them to be able to be themselves.
I have friends in South Asia. They liked Moscow. Study here, work. I would like to say that, especially in South America, there are people that like here study, especially medicine, work here. For me, I didn't hear about this problem.
What makes you like top things that makes you stay here in Russia?
There's actually a handful. Like, obviously, for me right now, my girlfriend's a big part of it. I love the public transportation in Moscow. It's amazing. Healthcare is so cheap. If I need to get some dental work done, I'd much rather do it here than the United States. If I get in some kind of accident, I'd much rather do it here than the United States. Cost of living is significantly cheaper. Even though I get paid less than I would in the States, it's just a fraction of the price. My phone bill is super cheap. My internet's super cheap. In general, it's much easier to live a comfortable life here, I think, than in the United States.
I'm just honestly, like I said, I'm treated better here. I'm invited to more events. Like I was at St. Petersburg Economic Forum last week. I was, top university in Russia for study of international relations. I attended, and I'm graduating right now. So I just feel like I'm treated better here, and there's just more opportunity. And it's really weird when I tell this to my friends in America, and also to say this to my Russian friends, they think I'm kind of crazy. But just judging from my personal experiences, this is what I've experienced, and I'm just, that's what I've experienced.
I enjoy the freedom of traveling around the city and everything, and I would even at night sometimes it's kind of safe to be real with you. It's kind of safe to walk around at night even. If you in the main streets and everything, it's really safe. I've been walked around the city even in the middle of night with friends, and it's really fine. I just enjoy the city even at night. So also I enjoy the museums and everything, as I said before, and I just realized when I see the city, it's so huge and everything. So when you see that, it's amazing. It's amazing visiting parks and everything. Yeah.
Speaking about communicating with Russian people, I'd like to now to speak about Russian mentality. So how can you describe it, and in general, who is a Russian person?
Okay, I would say that it becomes more obvious when you've traveled a lot that I would say there are very strong gender roles in Russia. I'll begin with that, and the man has his duty, the woman has her duty. Protect, provide, that's the man's job, and the woman is to be nurturing, be caring, cook and clean, whatever's okay in whatever household. But these two things are pretty obvious and pretty defined in the home in Russia from what I see, and I think that is what a Russian is. They are, a Russian man is a man who's strong, and his goal is to be strong and take care of his family, and a Russian woman is to nurture and make the home peaceful and happy and loving and caring, and raise the children. I think that's what a Russian family would be like, and from my opinion.
I mean, you kind of look at you can take Japan, United States, and Russia, for example. In Japan, there's very skinny guys, and that kind of tends to be what girls are attracted to, so they're kind of throwing away with their typical terms of masculinity. It seems to work for them. In the United States, we have a lot of gender fluidity and things like this kind of taking more prominence. But here in Russia, I feel like there's this fear of change. It's always been this way across the world that, men are strong and they should be protectors and stuff like this. And I think Russians might just be afraid to lose that identity that they've grown up with instead of trying to move towards something more progressive. I'm not really completely sure.
I would say cold at first, but warm later. When you get to know them, they're really nice and really kind. That's what I would say, in short.
Okay, and why do you think at first sight Russian people seem to be cold? Why they're not so nice at the first sight? Why like this?
I don't know. I think there's maybe they have some trust issues or something. I don't know, with foreigners maybe. But when you get to know them, and especially when you speak in Russian, they're really amazed. They're oh, очень хорошо говорит по-русски, and that's an opening for you to be friends with them. Yeah.
I think that being American, my experiences will be very different from somebody who's came straight from Africa. I think that when I speak and when I introduce myself and tell people, they're very excited, you know, because the movies, the music, everything American, politics, whatever, whether or not it's good or bad, it's just interesting, and they don't really have a chance to go to America. And I think a lot of Russians have a dream of going to America at one time or another. And so my experiences would be very different and are very different from my friends, even in Europe, who are African. You know, they don't get treated the same way that I do. And now, Russians may be colder, but I think it's definitely due to the weather. Because even in New York, the East Coast, people are very cold. They don't like making new friends because it's very cold. But if you go down south to Texas, people are very nice, very respectful. You go buy something at the grocery store, the cashier is like, hey, how you doing? What's your name? Where are you from? And I think it's something you find when you go into hotter, warmer climates. I lived in Sweden for 2 years. It's very cold. They don't really like to talk to new people. However, I'm American, and they're extremely happy and excited to talk to me. I'm in Russia. It's cold. They're extremely excited and happy to talk to me. And I think that these factors all come into one. The weather is definitely a huge thing.
Yeah, I mean, the weather here is really harsh and everything. Like when I started here, like I used to get colds and everything during the winter. It was really hard. I used to take like tablets every day. But like now I'm really used to, like I lived like 4 years here. So like now I'm really used to the weather and everything. And I like
Russian mentality is very prudent. I think that Russians they're much more to themselves than Americans, which that's something I miss about America. I think, you know, I miss like people just like waving to each other, like hello, like, and very open. But some people criticize Americans as being superficial because of that, exactly. But I think Russians are sort of like a hard nut, almost. Like the outside is very hard, but once you get to the inside and you get to know a Russian person, it's very, really good. So I think Russians are a little bit more into themselves than Americans, but once you get to know them, they're pretty cool.
Russian people, there are like good friends. They love to talk, to share things. I know people, Russian friends, and they help you when you can talk Russian. And I could say that this is the like problem when you came first time here. You can speak well Russian, but after that there's no problem for me.
I have some colleagues, friends, Russian friends here. Do they generally differ from your friends from the US or maybe other foreign friends you have?
I'd say more pessimistic, maybe. I mean, that I guess could be part of the Russian mentality. There's a bit more pessimism in general.
Okay.
I'll say something optimistic, and I'm always met with the same response. Doesn't matter who, like, oh, that's the American speaking in you. Like, that optimism is because you're American.
Yeah, I think that Americans and people in the West just don't understand Russians. And I think that Russians are actually much more similar to Americans, especially Americans living in the South, you know, where I'm from in the US. I think there's a lot of similar values that people share. So I think it's a myth that Russians hate Americans, to be honest. I think that's ridiculous, to be honest.
Okay, and have you personally ever faced some maybe racial things, racial discrimination here in Russia, some racist maybe statements from Russian people, so or maybe some like situations like this?
I've never faced any racial discrimination in Russia, and the only thing that has happened is people asked to take pictures with me, but that's totally fine. And if I had never seen a black person before and one was walking right by, I would ask to take a picture as well, and I would stare. And I don't take staring as anything rude. It is what it is. It's, you know, people are interested, and that's just leave it at that. You know, I don't like to dig into things and bring things up where there's nothing. You know, people are always very nice and very respectful and very caring. And I've traveled. My you know, ex-girlfriend, she's Russian, and I spent a lot of holidays with her family. They didn't speak any English, and they were all loving and taking care of me, serving me, and I always felt at home. I never felt like I was a second-class citizen or people were treating me less than. So, no, never faced anything in Russia ever.
Actually, yeah, I think like most of them are like kind of serious, and like there's no funny stuff. There's nothing. They're just serious, but it's good. Like there's no like harassment or anything. Actually, I had like good experiences with Russian people. Like there was no like problems with people actually. Like even though I was a foreigner, like I talk to them if I want to like find a road or something. Like they're really helpful. They're like, oh, you show me this and this way, we go this way. Like I had back in Tula, I had a friend, it's me and an Indian friend, and we were trying to find a road. We didn't know where to go, and we couldn't like barely speak Russian because we were just starting to learn the language. And we just asked some person. He's like, okay, go this way, go this way. Like he showed us the straight. He came with us and showed us all the way to the market that we wanted to go. Like so, I had some good experiences. So I think, overall, I have a positive image about the people and everything. So that's my main thing. Like if you respect the culture, if you respect the people, like you won't face that kind of problems. That's what I think.
Honestly, I think I'm treated better in Moscow than I am in the US. Like I think as a straight white male, I think I'm treated better in Moscow than I am in the US. And it's kind of ironic because as an American citizen, I'm treated better here than I am there. And I think one of the reasons for that is because I think meritocracy is almost dead in America. I think affirmative action completely killed meritocracy. But in Russia, I mean, meritocracy, it seems like it's alive and well. I mean, at the university, it seems like all my classmates are like super smart and super hardworking. So that's one of the things that I like about living in Russia. I'm just treated better here. It seems like. That's just my personal experience. Whereas in the US, it's just, there's so much tension. There's so much societal tension, racial tension, and it's honestly just depressing living in the US as a young person. And I think there's just more opportunity for young people in Russia than there are in the US. So
I have seen that Russian people seem to not like Southerners as much, maybe like from Kazakhstan or something like this. And I'm not like the whitest person, so I have been, I think, profiled by police. They've stopped me. You know, I'll be walking down or in the metro with my girlfriend. She'll be wearing a backpack. It'll be fine. But if I'm wearing the backpack, they'll stop me and scan it. So I notice it there, but it happens in the States too. So it's not something I'm super surprised about.
Yeah, Russian police, they tend to check your ID if they see that you're not absolutely white. That's true.
Yeah, I even had an instance where they wanted to see something on my phone I didn't quite understand because my Russian wasn't as good back then, and they like were pressing buttons on my phone, like getting me to some weird place, and I had no idea where they brought me to, but they like looked at some number and noted it down, and I was like, okay, whatever.
Did they explain the reason for it?
No, they didn't.
And do you think that in the United States such situation might happen with police?
Absolutely not. I mean, I feel like in the United States, more people understand that police don't have the right to touch you or your things without a warrant, and they will exercise that right to say, no, you cannot unless you have a warrant. So, but here I feel like police might not care as much about whether or not they're allowed to do it. I'd say in States, people might stand up for themselves a little bit more often.
Yeah, so my interaction with police in the US is much more negative than my interaction with police in Russia. I think that police in the US are like on a complete power trip, but whereas in Russia, it's almost like they're not like an NPC. Like police in the US are like these NPCs, and they just like are on this power trip, and it's just, I don't know, it's so tense. Whereas in Russia, I've been stopped by the police like once or twice just randomly and asked for my passport. But it's almost like Russian police like are actually, they think and they understand and they kind of think through things logically, and it's not this very aggressive interaction. So my interaction with the police in Russia has only been positive, to be honest. Even though in the West people make it seem like it's like this police state, judging from my own, observations here, I think the US is actually more of a police state than Russia. So, it's almost like all the police in the US are former soldiers, and they come back from, overseas conflicts with like PTSD. And it's almost like the police in the US have become extremely militarized. You like see there's like these military vehicles essentially, but they have like painted on the side of them police. And so yeah, I think the police is much more militarized in the US for sure than in Russia. So
in the United States, presidents tend to change every 4 years, but in Russia the situation is a little bit different. Our president hasn't changed for more than 20 years. So does it affect your life maybe in some way? Does it influence your everyday life? Maybe you have some negative consequences from this fact, or maybe from other political aspects in Russia.
It doesn't affect my life in any way. Whatever works for Russia, and I'm just here, just living my life. I'm not really a political person. I don't pay attention to it often. I just focus on finances and making sure my family's taken care of. So as long as I'm getting what I need, then I have no issues.
Honestly, my views on a president being elected every 4 years have actually changed, because when you live in the US and you have these massive swings between parties, and like one day you're living in like one country and the next day you're living in a completely different country, and it's honestly very destabilizing, and it's very nerve-wracking, honestly, when you live in a country where every 4 years like the political party is changing. So my opinion honestly has changed. Living in Russia, there's more stability here. I mean, believe it or not, I mean, to a Western audience listening to this is probably think I'm like crazy, but I just feel like there's honestly more stability in Russia than there is in the US. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. That's just like my personal observation. So,
Well, do you think that the fact that in Russia there is, well, the president hasn't changed for more than 20 years, it helps to maintain stability in the country?
absolutely. But you could also argue that in the United States, the presidents come and go, but the people behind them stay the same. And the deep state people, the people who are work in, the State Department and CIA, NSA, they're not elected by the people, but they work for 20 years. So the people who are actually controlling the country in the United States, they're not elected by the people, but they still are in power for, forever, for as long as they want to stay in their position. So
I would say no. Like I live in with the university area, and I just focus on my studies and my work. So I would say no. I haven't faced that much issues. Everything's been calm there, and I try not to focus on that kind of stuff, because I'm studying medicine in Russian, so that's already enough for me. I have a lot of stress, and I have to study everything. I have to translate stuff and understand the material and everything, and I really don't look at political stuff. I just focus on my work, and I really haven't been bothered by that stuff, and no one has bothered me with that stuff. So yeah, I just try to stay out of it and just focus on my goal.
Of course, now there's this situation of war and this stuff, but especially the relation between Russia and South America, I don't feel there is not problems. Students came every year here to study.
Educational system in Russia is actually better than the educational system in the United States. I think that in the past 20-25 years, the educational system, especially in universities, has completely changed. I think you cannot study international relations, for example, in the US without being completely indoctrinated with some sort of neo-Marxist, LGBTQ propaganda. You can't, it's impossible to objectively study history without, studying history through the lens of some sort of critical Marxist theory. And it's crazy when I say this to Russian people. People in Russia think I'm crazy for saying this, that in America they study Marxism. But you just cannot escape that in the US when you're in the university system. So that's what I really like about living in Russia, is that you can objectively study your subject in the university without being just inundated constantly and incessantly with this just propaganda all around you. So yeah.
I would definitely say it depends on the state. I mean, you got to look at the educational system in the United States. If somebody's from Tennessee, they're not going to be, the schools are not good at all. They have really, really low quality education. When you go to the East Coast, Boston, New York, we all know Harvard University is the greatest university on earth. New York has amazing schools. The education system in the East Coast is the best in the entire country. So there's no coincidence why this person's experiences in Tennessee are drastically different from mine, because we have the best schools in the entire world in Boston.
I think there's a certain point when you learn about history, learn about civil rights, the history of civil rights. I think that's good. But I think once you get to a certain point where it's we have to punish white people and punish straight white males, it's beyond crazy at a certain point. And I think when I say this to Russian people, they think I'm insane. But that's the level to what it's gotten in the United States. It's all the time. You cannot escape this just propaganda in the US of this diversity and inclusion. You just can't escape it, and it's really sad, to be honest.
Have you thought about relocating to another city, maybe in Russia or another country?
Yeah, so my girlfriend and I have thought about moving to Sochi or somewhere more south where winters are shorter. Yeah. There's more sun, just because that's nicer. I love Moscow, but I'm sure I would love other cities as well. As far as other countries, I do want her to come with me to the United States, at least for a few years, just because I miss it. I haven't been back since I came here. I want her to be my family. And I want her to see what life is like there. And then from there, where we go, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll come back to Russia. Maybe we'll go to some other country. I know she would love Italy, but it's kind of up in the air.
Sincerely, I would like to stay here. It's a good country. You can make a life here. Of course, there are other chance. Maybe it depends of I can get this scholarship or not. But Russia is one of my places I would like to live.
So how long are you planning to stay here in Moscow, maybe in Russia, or maybe you're planning to visit some other cities?
Yeah, honestly, I'm open. Like, I want to go where I'm treated best. And given right now, this time, I'm treated best in Moscow, so I want to stay in Moscow. But I'm open, you know, if things change, like, I'm open to move anywhere. Like, and also I'm graduating from university. I want to explore the world a little bit more. But yeah, there's a special place in my heart for Russia, and I definitely see my future here. So yeah, I think I will have a future in Russia for sure, long term.
I really haven't decided. Like, I have to do an exam when I go back to my country after I finish. So I'm thinking I will do that exam, then I'll decide. I might even come back, like, because I like this place. So like, I might even come back and like do like my specialty or something, or maybe some other country. Like, I really haven't decided, but like, even coming back to Russia is also one of my options, of course.
We have a lot of viewers from the Western countries and the US. What can you say to them who are planning to move to Russia and who are afraid of being penetrated or killed here and all the stereotypes concerning Russia? What can you say to these people?
I could say I think it's a lot more safe than some Western media might make it out to be. Russians are probably a lot nicer than Western media might make it out to be. But if you're not feeling super you know, самоуверенность, I don't remember the English word for some reason, confident about it, then maybe wait a little bit. Maybe wait and see how the political situation kind of goes down.
Get the correct opinions about Russia. Like, there are lots of like fake news like going around, like about people, about the culture, about the city, and like everything. I think you should look for accurate sources and like try to understand, like maybe like talk to people who have actually been to the country and like had, I mean, some people might of course have bad opinions, but for me it's been already just been a great experience here, like something I'll never forget from my life. So like, I would say like look for good sources of information and like trusted sources. And like, if you're thinking of moving, of course, like it's a big decision, of course. But like I would say, yeah, it should be one of your options, because like it's a relatively safe city and it's like a great city. There's a lot of like things you can see, and like, yeah, I would say Russia is one, like a good country to visit.